Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Medeiros. I am the Community Engagement Manager at Peninsula Open Space Trust, and I want to welcome you all to this fun program tonight that we have about the bats of the Bay Area with NorCal Bats. Before we begin, as always, but especially this week, as we just celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, we want to pause and acknowledge the Native communities of the Bay Area. The land and post working area has been home to many communities of Native people since time immemorial. We work to conserve and care for these lands, which are the ancestral lands of the Amamutsun, Muekma Ohlone, Ramaytush Ohlone, and Tamian Nation. These indigenous communities are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. So wherever you are, please pause to acknowledge these communities. Think about how you can support them directly. And if any of you are from Native communities today, we want to welcome you, and we encourage you all to share about whose land you are on in chat. Thanks for joining us. I want to share about Post for those of you who are new very quickly. We are a 501c3 nonprofit land trust based in San Mateo, Santa Clara, and northern Santa Cruz counties. We work to protect open space, farms and parkland, redwood forests, many types of land for the benefit of all people. And this has been very successful work over the past 40 years, over 80,000 acres protected, thanks to all of you, the community and our supporters. We want to say thank you very much to all of you. And amongst the many things that Post does, we work to protect wildlife habitat and in all of its forms. And that includes all sorts of animals, including bats. So bats are definitely some of the most underappreciated wildlife that we have in our lands around here. And we wanted to spend an hour learning about them from a really amazing person named Corky Quirk of NorCal Bats. Corky is the founder of NorCal Bats, an organization that provides care for injured bats and educational programs for libraries, schools, fairs, and other events throughout the region. Corky has been working intensely with native bats since 2004 and has educated thousands of people. She works with injured and orphaned bats, returning them to the wild, and keeps a captive colony of non-releasable bats for use in education. She is permitted through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the USDA. She is also an experienced environmental educator with a degree in natural resource planning and interpretation from Humboldt State University. So with that, very excited, like the rest of you, to hear from Corky. Welcome, Corky. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I admire what you do so much. I know many of our audience members do too, and it's a really cool job, really cool work. I bet you there's a lot of young people in the audience too, so I thought you could just maybe share how'd you get into this?
Sure. Yeah. So, I've always liked the underdog and I've always loved flight, but I didn't really know a lot about bats other than, what you just sort of know as general wildlife. And then I took a job at a local wildlife area in Davis, California, to teach kids about birds and wetlands. And there's a very large colony of bats here. And I just fell in love with them. And they have run away with my life.
That's great, and we need a champion for the bats, and you're it. So I'm very excited to learn from your extensive knowledge, and I know the audience is too. I see a lot of comments already. So I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to turn it over to you, huh?
Super. All right. So I'm with Northern California Bats. I do wildlife rescue. So I'm taking in bats that people find when they're hurt, and we try to help them return to the wild. Sometimes I have an individual animal that we cannot quite help enough, and those are the bats that stay with me. So if we could switch over so we can see the bats that I brought. Go box. There we go. So here is a Pallid Bat. The next one, the one in the middle, is a big brown bat. And the one on the far side here is a bat called the Mexican free-tailed bat. And this is a pencil to kind of give you an idea of size. All three of these bats are native. So these are some of the bats that you could see flying around your neighborhood, eating the insects, because that's what our bats eat. They eat insects. All right, if you could bring me back to me. Excellent. I will be taking out each of those individual bats and showing them to you during the second part of the program. But first, I'm going to be sharing my screen here so that I can share with you PowerPoint, a little bit of information about bats, so that hopefully you can learn more and appreciate them. So again, I am with Northern California Bats, and they are out there eating the bats that bug us. And I just couldn't resist this little cartoon because Midge, I live near the rice fields, and there are just so many Midge here. So again, in case you were missing the names of the three I'm going to show you, Mexican free-tailed bat, very common species, the big brown bat, and the Pallid Bat. And again, all three are native. They all are local. And before I get into bats, though, I do want to address COVID-19 because especially early on in the pandemic, there were questions about whether bats had some kind of role. So first, we know mammals and birds are known to have coronaviruses. That includes people. Common cold is a coronavirus. Most of those viruses don't move between wildlife and people, but sometimes things change. So in the process of trying to figure it out, scientists found that there is a virus that is similar to the virus causing COVID-19 in horseshoe bats in China. And it's not the same. We cannot catch that virus from the bats. But because it's similar, the question was raised of, well, is that where it came from? And maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Maybe it changed through another animal. There's still a lot of research going on. However it got to us, if it did come through wildlife, it's not about the wildlife. They are not out there trying to get us sick. It's about the way we interact with our environment. Taking animals out of their habitat, mixing them up with species they never normally would be around. High stress, wildlife trade, habitat destruction, many of the ways we interact cause us to be around them more often, viruses to change, and then we jump on airplanes and spread things. We do know you cannot get COVID-19 from a bat. One of the things that's now being researched is, can we make the bats sick? Hopefully not. All right, so we're going to talk about bats. First of all, bats are pretty darn cool because they are mammals like us, but they can fly. And they fly with their hands, and they have the same bone structure that we have in our arm and hand. So if we look at this picture, we can see the arm with an elbow, a wrist, a thumb, and 4 fingers. The first 2 are right next to each other. 3, 4. They are in the order Chiroptera, and in Greek that word means hand wing. Now, around the world, there's about 1,430 species of bat. And that's pretty impressive when you consider there's only around 6,400 species of mammal. So this chart shows us all the different kinds of mammals divided by their order or their large grouping. Notice the diversity in the rodents, right? Lots of different kinds of rodents in the world. But the next big group is the bats. 1,430 as of January of this year. Still finding more and still learning a lot. In the United States, we have 47 different species, 25 in California, and 17 in the northern part of our state, 15 of which are found in the San Francisco Bay Area. So 15 different species that we could see, all of them eating insects and targeting different insects. So these are just a few of our bat friends that you could see there. Bats are incredibly important because they are eating the insects that eat our crops. And there's a variety of insects that do get into the crops and are problems for backyard farmers and for gardeners. And it's not the moth stage, it's the caterpillar stage for most insects that are the problem for the crops. It is the adult stage that the bats eat, hopefully before, in this case, before the moth lays its eggs, and then the caterpillar, in this case, would be eating the corn. There is an upside to seeing some of these insects in your food, and that is that, of course, that means the farmer is not using insecticides, right? Pesticides. Now, this is our Mexican free-tailed bat. Very, very common species. They've learned how to live around humans. They'll often live in our buildings and our bridges. Of course, historically, they would be in caves, hollows of trees, large rock outcroppings, things of that sort. But, you know, we've taken away some habitat and we've added other unique things. Mexican free-tailed bats mainly eat the moth and some mosquitoes. They eat other insects too. They are saving farmers billions of dollars a year in the United States. Billions. From reduced pesticide use and reduced crop loss. And that's because in the summer, when most of those crops are growing, a mother bat has to eat approximately the equivalent of her own weight. So let's see, who do we have here? We have an ear, this is the mother, an eye, mom's nose, the mom's brown furry body, and her wing. And this is her newborn baby, ear, eye, mouth, belly button, no fur yet, and the pup's wing. So if the Mexican free-tailed bat weighs 10 grams, she has to eat 10 grams worth of moth. Well, moth don't weigh very much. They weigh between 1/10 and 2/10 of a gram. So that means she has to eat between 50 and 100 moth each night while she's nursing that baby. Well, not all of those moths are going to be laying eggs. Some of them are male, some are females that aren't ready to lay eggs yet. But let's say 20 of them, 20 in a night. A moth can lay about 500 eggs. So that means she's preventing about 10,000 moth eggs, potentially 10,000 caterpillars per night in the summer. And I chose 20 because if a farmer finds 20 moth in an acre of corn, that farmer may decide that insecticides are needed because of the quantity of crop loss. Insecticides are expensive. $15 an acre. If the farmer has around 2,000 acres, that's $30,000. Now, I live in Davis. We have the Yola Bypass Wildlife Area here, and the farmer grows rice. He grows 2,000 acres of rice. We have 250,000 Mexican free-tailed bats in the Yolo Causeway, which runs right next to his rice fields. he tells me he doesn't have to use insecticides. He's never found an armyworm, which is the crop pest for the rice. So want to share with you a few of the bats that you could have flying around you. The little brown bat lives across much of the north part of North America. It's quite small, weighs around 7 or 8 grams. The California myotis is even a little bit smaller. They're closer to about 5 grams. And little bats eat little insects. So these are your guys that are out there eating the gnat and the midge, the mosquito, all those little bothersome insects. Big brown bat, all over the United States, much of Central America, and even into Canada. They can deal with just about any climate in the United States. So they are found up in the mountains, they're found down in the valleys, they're found in the along the oceans, they're found in the middle of the U.S. They can deal with cold. If they live where it snows, they'll hibernate. They can deal with heat. Big brown bats are beetle eaters. So where the Mexican freetail likes the moth, these guys like the beetles. They also like wood quite a bit. So you might notice that those are wooden structures that those bats are hanging on. They'll be under the bark of trees or up in the palms, barns, bridges. Pallid bat, pretty special bat, I think. It's found in grasslands and deserts. The pallid bat hunts for invertebrates that live on the ground. So that lower picture, that's a scorpion. That's pretty amazing. They also eat grasshoppers and potato bugs and such. Now, I mentioned the Mexican free-tailed bat. It has the name Mexican, but in reality, it has quite a wide range. Some of them migrate, and some of them don't. The ones in Northern California, we don't think actually leave the state. The ones that are in Texas, many will migrate into Mexico, but even that, not all of them do. This lower left-hand picture, if you're trying to figure out what in the world, that's a Spanish tile, one of those red roof tiles. So the Mexican freetails get up inside there. This bridge on the right, that is the bottom of the Yolo Causeway. And you can see the crevices, those small crevices there. That's where the bats live. They get up nice and snug inside there. This upper picture are bats flying out of Bracken Cave near San Antonio, Texas. Largest colony of any single mammal species. 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats call that home in the summer. Here's what our little bats look like in those expansion joints. So this is taken standing down below, looking straight up into one of those crevices. And I got to put a plug in for our flyouts. You can go on your own. We also run tours out there to learn about the bats and watch them fly. A few of our others. The canyon bat on the left, tiny. We hear about a bat sometimes called the Bumblebee Bat. It's from Thailand, and it's the smallest bat in the world. The canyon bat is fractions of a gram heavier. Almost the smallest, but not quite. These guys weigh maybe 3 grams. You wouldn't even know if you had one in your hand. And then on the right, this is a bat called the Townsend's big-eared bat. And the Townsend's big-eared bat is pretty sensitive to people. So where caves are found that have Townsend's big-eared bats in them, frequently they're protected. So if you go to like Pinnacles National Monument and you're like, why are those caves closed? They're often closed to protect this particular species. These guys are moth eaters, but they just don't do well around people. Now, not all bats hide. So Horybat, another one of our locals, it hangs in a tree much like a pine cone. It does not hide, although that said, its camouflage is quite good. And in the picture on the left, you might notice too, it has fur underneath its wing as well as all over its body. And that's because it's solitary. So it's living by itself, needs a little extra fur to stay warm. One of my most common Horybat calls is this picture on the left. I have a bat. It has to be sick. It's lying on its back. And that just doesn't look normal. Well, Horybats live in trees, and sometimes birds knock them out, or sometimes squirrels knock them out, and they fall and they land on the ground. And this is what they do. Little click and hiss. That's the Horybat. Another one of our solitary tree roosting bats is the western red bat. It's usually found in deciduous trees where the Horybats are in the evergreens. It's not perfect, though. Sometimes they mix themselves up. But like a Horybat, red bats are very furry. Red bats look like a peach hanging in the trees, and they are around us. Says iNaturalist. Look at where that bat is, right? That's in I believe that's the Presidio in San Francisco. Now, I want to run through a little bit about bats that you might come upon and what you may or may not want to do. So, first of all, kind of knowing what's normal and what's not. So, this bat on the left, that's a Pallid Bat, and that's completely normal behavior. They will hang out in the open, usually up in a corner, whereas the bat on the right, it's lower down on a wall. It's clinging, but it's not quite normal. So I would be concerned about the bat on the right, whereas the bat on the left is probably perfectly healthy. Again, on the left, not very high up, that bat also has really super short fur. That's summertime, and that's a baby. So maybe that baby has lost its mom. Whereas again, the Pallid Bat down there, up in a corner, they love stucco. They just love stucco. And I put that little picture of the potato bug in there because frequently when people call about Pallid Bats, they call and say, yeah, I got this bat and it's just leaving a mess on my porch. And there's all these cricket legs or potato bug heads or scorpion tails, things like that. And that's an excellent clue for a pallid. It's also normal for bats to get into umbrellas. Unfortunately, they poop and pee, or they'd be great neighbors. But if you're able to leave your umbrella closed until night and then open it up, and the bat should fly away. Luckily in California, we don't have a specific disease associated with the guano. So, you just sweep it up, use it as fertilizer, and then just clean your table like you normally would. Clean it off like you would before a picnic. All right, so you don't want the bat inside your house. And these guys here, again, you can see how tiny bats are. This is just along the edge of somebody's home. If the guano is falling where it doesn't really matter, no big deal. But if it's making a mess, then, you might want to think about what you do. This guy, no fur. This is a baby bat that needed to come into rescue. They also sometimes get hit by ceiling fans. So if for some reason you end up with a bat flying inside your house, turn off the ceiling fan. And here's one of our rescues, way up there. All right, there's a little bat in a stairwell. I find, except for having to go up the ladder, way easier to get a bat out of a building in the day when it's sleeping than it is to wait until it's flying. I just pick it like a piece of fruit. A few other issues they get into. It's really hard to learn to fly, and it's really hard to learn to capture enough insects. So in the late summer and early fall, sometimes the first-year bats are having a hard time. Also, with the fires, some of the habitat has been lost, and that has been a bit of an issue for the bats. Predators, of course, are a problem. We get a number of calls about cat-caught bats. We also get bats that fall into swimming pools. And with the drought going on, we're getting a little uptick in that. Bats can swim, but they cannot climb up the side of a pool. So we recommend a wildlife ramp. The one in the center is called a frog log. The one on the right is a homemade wildlife ramp and a horse trough. So if you have water like that, you might consider putting something in to give the wildlife a way to get out. Also get a number of bats that are caught on sticky traps. If you need to put sticky traps up, please put them inside wire so that the birds and the bats and the butterflies don't get caught. Best if you use other kinds of deterrents outside rather than putting up something sticky. It's just a terrible way to die. And unfortunately, most of the bats that end up on sticky traps die. Not all, but a lot of them do. Also, while we're on the negative, I do want to mention white nose syndrome. White nose syndrome is caused by a fungus, and you can see the white fuzz growing on these bats. This fungus was likely transported by people. It first showed up in a commercial cave in New York State. So the assumption is somebody went hiking in somewhere in Eurasia where this fungus is native. And once it got into our caves, it started spreading. Humans spread it as we go in and out of caves and don't clean in between. Bats also spread it on their migration routes, going in and out of their caves. When it gets into caves with the small hibernating bats, they wake up too often during hibernation and they starve to death. So they don't die from the fungus directly, they die of starvation. And this is where we're at now. If you look at California, you see these are counties, and you can see that there's open circles. Open circles mean the DNA of the fungus has been found, but we have yet to find a sick bat. These solid over here, in some cases, they've lost, depending on the species, 50 to 90%. Little brown bats and northern long-eared bats have been hit particularly hard. So that's tough. So what can we do? Well, number one, stay out of caves. If we do go into caves, we must clean everything before we go in and after we come out. And then, of course, educating others, because bats don't get a lot of attention, so not a lot of people understand what's going on. And then also supporting research to try to get a handle on this. There's quite a number of agencies and universities that are trying to figure out what to do. Also want to mention just the massive decline in insect population. This is pesticide use, and this is 10 years. If you look down the side, we're killing our pollinators and we're killing our decomposers. And it's not just bats that need these insects. We need them, but so do the fish, the birds, the reptiles, and the mammals. All right, so let's see. What do you do if you end up with a bat that needs some help? Well, if a bat's on the ground, there's probably something wrong with it. They have teeth and they're little tiny mammals. So number one, don't handle it, especially not bare-skinned. You can contain it, call wildlife rescue. If you need to move it, don't do it barehanded. Make sure you wear gloves for yourself so you don't get bit, but also for the bat. We are not allowed to take a bat into rescue that a person has been handling bare-skinned. Just in case that bat is sick, the health department is going to want to take it and test it. If you do put it in a box, keep it safe. The concern, of course, is the possibility of rabies. Most bats aren't sick with rabies, but they can be, right? Worldwide, dogs. Dogs are the biggest problem for passing rabies to people. But in the US, we vaccinate our pets, so we're worried about feral cats with no shots, bat, skunk, and fox, as being the most likely to be near people when the animal is sick. A bat on the ground has a 1 in 10 chance of testing positive for rabies. Not all bats are sick with rabies, but a bat on the ground, there's a higher rate. But rabies is passed through saliva. If you never handled the bat bare-skinned, you are not exposing yourself. So as long as we're, keep our heads, rabies is certainly something that we can have a decent handle on. Sometimes they get into our house. I showed you that picture with the bats in the Spanish tile. The process of kicking them out is called exclusion. And it's basically putting up one-way doors so that the bats can get out, but they can't get back in. We don't do it in the summer because of the babies, because the babies aren't flying. And so if you kick the mom out, the baby will die. If the bat's in your house, easiest to wait until it lands. Turn off low the inside lights, turn on the outside lights. That gives the bat a direction to go. Also, light attracts insects, so that'll help the bat know where to go. And then if you contain it and take it outside, put it up high enough so it can drop to fly. Bat houses are a great way to provide some habitat, some roosting locations. This one on the left, you can see this is a bat house. And here's another one. And this is an osprey nest. So dual purpose on that pole. This is a predator guard so that predators cannot get up into the bat house. And this is on a barn. And if you're wondering what this weird little thing is down below, and you'll see it on the one with the osprey nest too, these are called Pup Catchers, because sometimes bat houses get really hot, and sometimes the babies come out to cool off, and if they fall, this catches them so that they can climb right back in the bat house. Bat houses are most effective if they're on a building. A pole is second. A pole is second best. If you put it on a pole, put bat houses back to back, you increase your chance of occupancy. And that has to do with fluctuation of temperature, and it has to do with predation, right? Don't put it in a tree. We almost never get bats in bat houses that are in trees. Too much shade, too many predators. In California, our bats don't seem to care about what color you paint your bat house. I think that's kind of interesting because some states apparently they do. Our bats don't. Now here's a few of our patients, bats that came in and needed a little extra to get themselves back in the wild. top bat's a Horybat, having a snack. The bats down in this lower corner, these are baby bats. They're all grown up now, but they were babies. This one is older than this bigger one. This is one of the little bats, maybe a little brown bat, maybe a California bat. This is a Mexican free-tailed bat, this pink one. No fur yet. But what I want you to notice is this white spot right there. That is milk, right? Because baby bats are mammals, so they drink milk. And when they're with us, they drink formula. So this is a plastic tube, a little syringe with formula in it. And this is an eyeshadow applicator. The sponge, right? So we drip the formula onto the sponge and the baby can suck and suck the milk right off the sponge. And this little fellow here, he was found with a broken leg. And a veterinarian put him in a cast. And once his leg healed up, he was able to go back out. I'm going to be down in your area end of this month. Got to put a plug in for Saved by Nature. Post is a sponsor of this event and the Bat Fest. And so if you want to see the live bats in person, that might be kind of fun. Come on over and say hi. And the website there, savedbynature.org, Bat Fest. Again, I'm with Northern California Bats. And that's our website. And that's our phone number. And we are going to meet the bats. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, bring you back to me. And I'm going to be changing cameras here in just a sec. So I can use my webcam to make the bats look big. I'm going to put on my gloves so that, well, they're little tiny wild animals, right? With teeth. And so I'm going to actually ask if there's any questions yet. So, Mark, do we have any questions yet?
Great, Corky. That is such cool information. I'm so excited to learn this stuff personally. And a lot of excited folks in the chat as well. So, yeah, so we have a second while Corky's getting her gloves on. And I think probably the biggest question I heard early on as you started speaking, you kind of mentioned a little bit about this, but in terms of the Bay Area, you know, East Bay, San Francisco, South Bay, do you have any suggestions for where people can go to see bats? Like maybe at dusk or something?
Yeah, so you're looking for water. Ponds are a great place to look for bats. At right about sunset, most of our bats drink water on the fly. So they'll wake up, come out of their roost, and then they'll swoop, take a drink. And then some of our littler bats hunt at the water. And so then we'll see them hunting around there too.
Okay. Great. So maybe time for one more here?
At least, probably a couple.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Do any bats eat dead bugs?
Bed bugs or dead?
Or dead ones. Dead bugs.
Dead ones. I don't know of any that eat dead insects. I think they just eat the live ones.
Okay.
And mostly they're eating flying ones, but not solely.
Yeah. Yeah, back to the question about where to see bats. You know, folks were excited about the YOLO Causeway
Yes.
opportunity. And somebody was asking, is that year round? Is there a best time of year to check that out?
It's not year round. The bats in the winter, most of them leave the YOLO Causeway, and the ones that stay go into torpor, which is not quite hibernation, but almost. So they're pretty inactive. They're starting to slow down now because it's been cold and it's been windy. So think summer.
Yeah.
We do the tours out here June through September.
Uh-huh.
And then there's also, people come and watch them on their own.
Got it. Cool. Wow. Here we've got a bat.
I do have a bat.
Okay, I'm going
All
to
right.
remove myself so people could see that better.
Yeah, let's see if I can get it to focus a little bit better too here. Let's see. So this is a Mexican free-tailed bat. Super common. Great little bat. These guys are big-time moth eaters. But one of the things I think is like amazing about the Mexican free-tailed bat is they are very, very fast flyers. So they have several adaptations for speed. One of them is that these little round ears come together and touch right in the center of their forehead, forming a V that helps to separate the air. And you can also maybe see that there's little bumps on their ears. They can use their ears for steering. I think that's just phenomenal. That's thumb, right? Thumb on the other side, which means the wing. Can I show your wing? Is here. So there is the oh, she's not happy about that. She's saying, "Give me back my wing." You can see the thumb, the fingers. Are let me see. Let me try that one more time. There we go. The skin between the fingers feels much like your eyelid. So it's very soft, very stretchy. Long, narrow wings means speed. So things with long, narrow wings. Peregrine falcon, jet plane, Mexican free-tailed bat. And there's the tail of the free-tailed bat. Most of our bats, the skin goes from the ankle to the tip of the tail and back around to the other ankle. But the free-tailed bats have control over that skin. And so stretch it out or tuck it up. A bat can use that skin as a rudder while they're flying. They can also use it as for lack of better, a net, or I like to call it a catcher's mitt, for grabbing an insect in flight. And hairy toes. A little hard to see the hairy toes. But there are hairy toes. And those are whiskers. Whiskers that, are used for feeling. Feeling when they're backing up in a crack or a crevice. They also can feel subtle changes in the way air moves. And little tiny teeth. Can you see your teeth? Little tiny teeth. Notice there's a gap in the center, and that gap is so that the teeth don't get in the way of echolocation. They are not rodents. They are not even close. They are much closer by DNA to dogs and cats. And if you were to see the inside of the mouth of a bat, it really looks like a miniature cat mouth. So I like to call them itty-bitty flying kitties. And about the size of my thumb. Let's see if she'll stay put long enough. Yep, about the size of my thumb. The Mexican free-tailed bat is the fastest mammal on Earth. Fastest mammal on Earth. Yes, they beat the cheetah by a lot. They have been tracked up to almost 100 miles an hour. There are some birds that are faster, but there are no mammals that can beat the Mexican free-tailed bat. All right. Do we have some questions about this bat? Or other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Corky. So many good questions. I don't think very specifically about this bat,
Okay.
but I want to remember to get to this one. There's a lot of questions about bat houses.
Okay.
Where can people get a bat house? What are the best types of bat house? And that sort of thing. Any recommendations there?
Yeah. So on our website on norcalbats.org, we do have a page about bat houses that have a list of suggested places to purchase them, and also some directions on how to make them yourself, if you're handy at all. And then as far as good bat houses, multi-chamber are better than single-chambered houses. And so something like one's called the nursery box. And yeah, if you go on Amazon, for example, what I see are a lot of bat houses that are made for people to look at versus bats to live in. So you really got to be careful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm flashing your website on the screen for people to go check out those resources. Let's see if I could ask one more. Somebody a while ago asked about fruit-eating bats or pollinator bats. Do we have any like that that are pollinators or fruit-eating in California?
So let's start with fruit. Fruit-eating bats are tropical. So we're not going to have any fruit-eating bats in the United States. There are some bats that eat fruit and other, so omnivores rather than herbivores in South America. The true fruit bats, the big flying foxes, those are Asia, Australia, Africa, and the Oakland Zoo. So if you get a chance to go to Oakland, go to the zoo. Big Malaysian flying foxes are there. As far as pollinating bats, there are a couple of species that pollinate the Southwest desert cactus. They do briefly wander into the very southern tip of California. But otherwise, we really don't see much in the way of pollinators in California either.
Gotcha. Well, I think you look ready there. The last one that maybe you could speak to while you're showing us this bat is there's so many questions about echolocation and how bats navigate. So maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, I didn't actually talk about that in my PowerPoint. So echolocation is sound. They can see with their eyes, and they do, but they are hunting when it's dark. And so they'll use their sonar for finding prey. But really, sound doesn't go very far. So their vision is very important for seeing, buildings and trees and predators and such. Pulses of sound that are out of our hearing range for the most part. So young humans might hear 20 kilohertz. Most adults top out 12 to 15 kilohertz. Those of us with gray hair, we're lucky to hit 10 kilohertz. The big brown bat, which is the bat in my hand, echolocates at around 30 kilohertz. So dogs and cats can hear it, but humans cannot. Different species echolocate at different frequencies. So researchers can use that information to figure out what species are flying around. The more detail the bat wants, the more the closer together those clicks. So slow at first, tick, 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 and then faster, tick, 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 and then right before they catch the insect, super fast, tick, 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 zzz, And it almost sounds like a buzz rather than separate ticking. So this is a big brown bat. It does not have its ears touching, much longer fur. These guys are capable of true hibernation if they live where it gets cold enough. It doesn't get cold enough in the Bay Area for true hibernation. So they'll go in and out of torpor instead. They are a little bit bigger. Big brown bats weigh maybe 18 grams versus the Mexican freetail around 11 grams. Takes about 28 grams to make an ounce. So just to give you an idea of how that converts. This bat and the Mexican freetail bat both were caught by cats, and each has a wing that has permanent damage. That's why they're in permanent captivity. Big brown bats are beetle eaters. They eat other insects too, but they have much bigger teeth. Can you show us your teeth? Can we see your teeth? There. So much bigger teeth. You can really see those fangs, the canines, and sharp all the way back. Oh, she says that's enough of that. She does not have a free tail. She is not a free-tailed bat. She has a big catcher's mitt. So here's the tail. She does have a tail, but you can see all that skin, the tail membrane. These guys like wood quite a bit. So we tend to see them under the bark of trees or in tree hollows, under palm fronds, bridges, under the eaves of houses, and such. When they live in captivity, I teach them to eat mealworms because I can buy mealworms and they're fairly nutritious, and she does like them. So that's a mealyworm. Usually she licks her lips. I'm going to lick your lips. Want another one? Another one? Here she goes. All three of the bats that I have with me are female, just because they are, right? I do have male bats, but the ones that I brought out today are female. And the only way to know if it's a girl or a boy is just like a dog or a cat. So pretty much they're similar in size. Their fur color is about the same. So you got to look under the tail, see if they have girl parts or boy parts. Are there other questions there?
Great, Corky. Everybody's very excited to, help bats along and get bat houses and whatnot. Really quick one. I think you said east facing.
Yes, east facing, 15 feet or higher is best. No lower than 10 feet.
Great. Okay, so there we go. We got that one. General questions about, aside from bat houses, are there other things that people could do to improve habitat for bats?
Yeah. So probably number one is, when possible, buy organic.
There you go.
Losing insects is a problem. And insecticides on the insects also cause bats problems. It'll affect their nervous system. And so that's a problem. Water, bats drink. So if you happen to have a pond, that's great. I did mention the wildlife ramps, so that's a good thing to have out if you do have water. Ponds, not necessary, but if you have a swimming pool, or if you have cattle and you have the big troughs and that kind of thing. If you plant plants that have nocturnal blooming, then that will attract nocturnal insects. And of course, bats like nocturnal insects. And especially if you're able to plant native plants. because that attracts the native insects.
Mhm. Great. And I imagine this is different for all the different species, but some folks are asking, and I love watching them eat. That's so awesome. A bunch of folks were asking about lifespans. Can you
Yeah,
share a
so
little bit?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
They're much longer lived than you would think. They're small animals. So typically, small animals have a shorter lifespan, but not bats. Bats will live 15 to 20 years in the wild. Littler they are, the longer they live. So, little brown bat, the record in the US was 32 or 34. I think it was 34. And the world record is 42, but that's a little tiny bat that lives in Siberia and hibernates 8 months out of the year. So, not sure how you count those.
Got it. Cool. Quick one.
I'm going to pull out the Pallid Bat while you're reading off a couple others.
Yeah. So bat babies are pups?
Yes.
Awesome. Checking that box. Somebody was asking, have you ever been bit by a bat, Corky? And what did you do?
Well, so before I started working hands-on with bats, I did have my rabies vaccine. So just in case, because I'm working with bats that people find on the ground. And I do get a percentage in each year that we suspect were sick with rabies. They die, or we euthanize them depending on what's up with them. I have been bit. If I get bit by one of these bats, the education ambassadors, I know they're not sick. They're never exposed to a bat that would have rabies, so there's no way for them to catch it. But it hurts. So I try not to be, right? It's like getting stabbed with needles. If I have a wild bat that comes in to rescue that for some reason I err and it bites me, then I go get a booster on the rabies shots. Look at these ears, right? Pallid bats are big bats for California. They weigh almost an ounce, and the ears are phenomenal. Sometimes people think, well, bats with big ears must echolocate better. But actually, bats with really big ears either echolocate less or more quietly. For the pallid bat, they can catch flying insects, but they often eat insects that live on the ground. So they're flying low and slow and listening for grasshoppers and Jerusalem crickets and scorpions and centipedes and large beetles and all those kinds of invertebrates running around on the ground. They land on them, grab them with their teeth, and then jump up and carry them away. If the bat gets mad or scared, it can put out a mild skunk odor. The pallid bat can. And that's because it's hunting on the ground. So it does need a little extra for protection. The pallid bat is not a free-tailed bat. It has a big tail membrane, big catcher's mitt. Right? She was found on the ground, and one of her wings was part of the wing was smashed, and so she has 1.5 wings instead of 2. So that's why she couldn't be released back into the wild. These guys are tough. I mean, to eat a scorpion, you got to be pretty tough. They do have their echolocation is almost in our hearing range, and they also chit chat. So you might hear bats. You might hear them communicating with each other. Blonde, that's camouflage for hunting in dried grass. These guys also will live in the desert. And in the desert, they will become pollinators too. because they will go to cactus flowers for liquid. Sometimes they also chew on the fruit of the cactus. And so possibly they may help in some seed dispersal. We're not quite as sure about that as we are with the fruit-eating bats. Here, we don't think they pollinate, the ones that live in Northern California. And yeah, so those are the really cool things about the Pallid Bat. Much bigger wing. Bigger, wider wing. Whoop! Just give me back that wing. That allows her to jump up off the ground and fly with a large invertebrate. Looks like we maybe had a few more questions come through.
Great, Corky. A lot of thank yous from the community. Great job. This is so fun. And a lot of young people too. It sounds like folks are watching with their kids.
Excellent. And, we need those kids, right? They are the future.
Right. Yeah, so we're coming up on an hour here, so I think we should start wrapping up. But we'll ask a couple more questions and then kind of make sure everybody knows how to learn more from you. So folks asked about, I want to address this really quick. You talked about, I forget the name. It's the white nose syndrome.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. Folks were asked, you were talking about that and people entering caves. And some folks were asking about local caves with bats. And so I wanted to just address that. It's probably a good idea for people to avoid, trying to look for bats in caves, right?
It is. Unfortunately, with white nose syndrome, we have to be more protective.
Yeah.
Many caves now are blocked off. If you go into park systems, often they will, if they do have their caves open, they'll require you to sanitize your shoes, and they'll ask questions about where you've been and that sort of thing to try to prevent this fungus from doing more damage.
Yeah. So, important point. We all want folks to be able to enjoy all the different exciting wonders of our local parks and preserves, but certain issues like this, we have to be mindful about how much impact we're having on places like caves and
Can you put the bats back up?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do that.
There they are.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think we're good. We'll stop there. So many great questions have been answered. I think we're okay. There's a lot more to learn, but folks have lots of chances to learn more from you, right?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a calendar on our website of where we're going and different places we do talks and that kind of thing. Also, if you're interested in having us do either a virtual or in-person talk for your own people, we do that. And I do try to gear it to the age. So if I'm doing, elementary school kids, I may be talking more about echolocation, for example. I also, one of you had asked earlier about what people can do to help bats. Bats have a hard time when people are afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a huge thing that that everyone can do, even the kids out in the audience, can help bats by teaching other people about why they're important and that they're not scary animals trying to hurt us. If we don't touch them, if we don't catch them, we don't handle them, they're not going to bite us. And, we need them. We need them because they eat the insects.
Mm-hmm. Very true. I really was listening when you're talking about the pesticide use and just the decline overall of our insect populations affecting our birds and bats and
And
we all,
fish.
yeah, and our fish. And it's really cool to hear from the audience, so many comments like, what can I do? How can I play a
Mhm.
role? And that's beautiful. We're doing here in the Bay Area, especially doing the best that we can. A lot of optimism we can have about how much more we could do. So as a community, we're gonna keep pushing on that. So
It's great to see so much land protected.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep it going. And it's great to meet an awesome community member who's doing great work, Corky. So thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
On behalf of the whole post community, we appreciate you. I hope many of you all go out to check out norcalbats.org and consider any presentations you might like to do with Corky. And I also want to highlight this upcoming Bat Fest by Save by Nature. It's a great organization doing accessible educational programming for all the diverse people of the Bay Area at many post-protected local parks and preserves. And they have this fundraiser coming up. I think it's October 23rd,
That's right.
Saturday.
Mhm.
And it's going to be at Rancho Canada del Oro Park towards Morgan Hill. And Corky's going to be there. You could meet
Mhm.
these bats in person. So great. All right, Corky, we're going to let you go.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us. And we're going to see you next time. All right. Everybody have a good evening.
Yeah.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.